Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm gonna showcase a team that I went on an absolute mad one with last night in the Single Type Cup, winning 16 out of 18 games and going way beyond the expert rank. I've noticed that a lot more people around the 26 to 2700 elo have started using more Umbreon, Vigoroth and Double, so I thought it was time to bring back the double counter user, but instead of Surfaced, I went with Vigoroth because it does a lot better against all the poison types that are very common right now, and it beats Cofagrigus in the zero shields, plus it can still apply a lot of shield pressure to all the fighting types when it's ahead on energy, which it will be if you use it as a safe swap. So I think it's a very good safe swap right now. The Cofagrigus Machamp core is very strong, so if you can win switch advantage with Vigoroth, it's great. But if you can get shield advantage for Shadow Machamp, you would rather get the 1-0 shield advantage, as in get both shield from the opponent, because Machamp doesn't like taking fast moves. So if the opponent, even though they're down a shield, still have a shield, they're going to be able to apply a lot more fast move pressure with like a Dragonair or a Ninetales or something like that. So you would rather be in a position where you can take them out quicker. I also went for Cofagrigus on the lead once again. I still don't like it as a lead because it loses a lot of leads right now. But it just fills the role you really need it to fill, in that it beats fighting and does alright against Ghost, Psychic and Fairy. And I think it's just the best Pokemon for this role. Overall, this team is amazing if you're seeing the same Pokemon that I am. And yeah, let's take a look at the battles. Going into the first game, we lead into an Umbreon. Yikes, we have to say swap Vigoroth immediately. And they counter swap a Cofagrigus. As I say, you can win the zero shields here with Vigoroth, just going straight Bulldoze. Because 2 Dark Pulses is not quite enough to take out a Vigoroth, whereas 2 Bulldozes should be enough to take out a Cofagrigus with the counter damage. Because I have a very, very good Vigoroth, it can be IV dependent. If you have a really good Vigoroth against a really good Cofagrigus, you might not be able to take it out with a Bulldoze. But as you see, we do get to this Bulldoze, and the opponent pretty much has to shield this if they want to keep switch advantage, which they very often want to. If I shield this, they're going to be able to get to another Dark Pulse before I get to another Bulldoze. So I'm just going to take my shield advantage and run with it. And basically, whenever you're facing an Umbreon and you know your Cofagrigus is going up against this Umbreon afterwards, you can basically just pretend like it's already in the ground, like just sacrifice it. It can actually live a Shadow Ball, surprisingly. It only does about 79%, meaning it does enough Shadow Claw damage to put the opposing Cofagrigus into a range where we can counter them down before they get to a move on Shadow Machamp. Now they bring in a Muk. I'm thinking that if I go for the bait and then go for the payback afterwards, they're going to be able to do too much damage to me. So go straight for the payback against this Muk, and it one-shots the Muk. And now we have Machamp up against Umbreon with a shield advantage, and there's no way the opponent is coming back from this game. Payback coming in clutch in the first game. Go for the foul play bait. I mean, I'm not really sure if it's a bait. A foul play is probably almost enough to take out from this range, as we get to the first Crush Chop, which is gonna take the shield, and now we can get to the second Crush Chop as well on Machamp, and this is of course gonna take out the Umbreon, does about 37%. So we win that first game, even into an Umbreon lead. Next game, lead into a Ninetales, pretty neutral lead. I do like to bring in Vigoroth at some point, after potentially grabbing a shield or doing big damage to this Ninetales. So we do go up to the Shadow Ball, and then I'm gonna bring in the Vigoroth to, like, sometimes it lures out a Fairy, sometimes it lures out Cofagrigus. It's pretty nice to bring in. This time it lures out Machamp, which is also okay. Because we got 2 counters head start, we should be able to get to 2 Body Slams before they get to farm us down, so we can't get to this. And I make a bit of a mistake here. As I say, you would rather grab both shields in this situation, and then because Machamp does a lot better in the 1-0 shields, I'm going to show some examples of that later on. This time we don't get punished for it, I don't think, but we can bring in the Cofagrigus and just basically sacrifice it. They only run Rock Slide. Most people only run Rock Slide, so we can take that move and then come out with the move on Cofagrigus as well. What do they bring in? They bring in a Dragonair, and it's very lucky we came out with this Shadow Ball, because now we can force the shield or do big damage. We force the shield from Dragonair. Now we can bring in Shadow Machamp and go for the Crush Chop. But this actually only does about 54%, so it doesn't quite take out the Shadow Dragonair. But we can just counter them down, and now the Ninetales should be so low from taking the Shadow Ball earlier that we can just counter that down as well. And that is a good game. Next game, very good lead into a Shadow Grimer. But they're staying in. I'm thinking that they might be double weak to Cofagrigus then if they're staying in, but no, they just stayed in to try and make a catch. Very nice catch by my opponent, bring in the double, but this puts the double into a range where Vigoroth can handle it, and I'm anticipating them to be double weak to fighting with their leading Grimer. and they're probably trying to lure out a fighter here, so I save my Machamp for later. Usually you would want to bring Machamp in on like a normal type, on Vigoroth or a double, because this is a very neutral matchup, but because we landed the Dark Pulse, I feel like I can save my Machamp for later. Also, Vigoroth does better against the Grimer when it comes back out of this matchup afterwards. So we can farm down this double after expanding the shield, and now we come out with energy, but the Grimer wins CMP, so they can take us out. They farmed up to 9 poison jabs, and now they're throwing a Mud Bomb. So they should be 3 away from the next one. 6, 6, 6, 5 for the Mud Bombs for Grimer. So we can bring in Cofagrigus. They try to catch maybe an Umbreon. Maybe they just brought it in. So we bring in Machamp. And then we have to shield the first move just in case it's a sidekick. It doesn't quite take out a Machamp, but it would do way too much damage. They are running Last Resort, which is absolutely fine. So now we can overfarm quite a lot more. It takes 5 for the first, 4 for the second 2 Last Resorts. So we can get to the Cross Chop before they get there. It takes out the Umbreon. And now the opponent realizes there's no way they're going to win this game, so they concede the match. Into a Shadow Dragonair in the next game, pretty neutral lead. I like to stay in and grab a shield, because Dragonairs usually always shield in this matchup. So stay in, go up to the Dark Pulse. We do have to take one move beforehand, and they should come out with 2 Dragon Breath from this matchup afterwards, because it takes the equivalent of 6 Shadow Claws for the Dragonflare to get to a move here. Meaning they will be 5 2-turn moves away from the next move, meaning they will be able to get to the move at the same time as Vigoroth, and this would be a CMP tie, which I don't want to go for because Vigoroth loses CMP against Shadow Dragonair. So we take that move or reshield it, and then they bring in a Clefable, which is pretty nice that we lure it out with Vigoroth, so we can go for the first Body Slam, and then I go for a bit of a risky CMP. I thought Vigoroth won this CMP quite clearly, but looking at it afterwards, this is actually very IV dependent, so a bit of a risky CMP, especially if they go for Moonblast, because this does about 58%, so it might have taken out Vigoroth. They only go for Meteor Mash, meaning we can survive it, and then we should be able to take a little bit more fast move pressure damage, putting our Vigoroth a lot lower, giving the opposing Pokemon a lot less farm for whatever they bring in. They bring in a Shadow Dragonair, we bring in Machamp, and because they threw all that energy earlier, they're not going to be able to get to another move, and now they have another Umbreon in the back, and that is probably a good game. The opponent should probably just concede at this point. Go for the Cross Chop, they do shield it, and then they concede the match. I guess they just wanted to get the most out of their shield. Or something. Next game lead into Cofagrigus, and this is a good showcase of why it's not nice to like let the opponent get off their move first in this game, in this matchup, because you really need to retain alignment. So now they're gonna grab the shield and then they're gonna swap out, and because they have a shield advantage, it's a lot more difficult for Machamp or Vigoroth to keep switch advantage against this Munch Black. So we can take the first Body Slam, then load up to 2 Cross Chops, and because we get to 2, I think my opponent realizes they have to expend 2 shields in order to get switch advantage here, so they're just gonna let it go, and then bring in Cofagrigus to tank this Cross Chop. But now we have retained the switch, and we're gonna keep Cofagrigus and their Cofagrigus, which is pretty huge in this matchup. Bring back in the Cofagrigus, they should be almost dry, so we can go up to back-to-back Dark Pulse, get off the first one, and this opponent is just gonna let the Cofagrigus go. Then bring in a Ninetales, and this is gonna be very close end game. Go for the Shadow Ball on Cofagrigus. I'm anticipating they're gonna shield, but yeah, now we bring in Vigoroth. They're 2 Embers ahead, but this is a very neutral matchup. They do need to land an Overheat in order to take out Vigoroth, or 2 Weather Balls, so we should be able to take this, go for the first Body Slam, and then we get to a second Body Slam as well before they get off a move. They wanted to overfarm as much as possible, just in case they go for Overheat. Want to go for it as late as possible to debuff themselves as late as possible, but they're so low at this point. Even if it's an Overheat, we should just be able to farm them down with Cofagrigus, and that is a good game. Next game lead into a Shadow Dragonair. Once again, same procedure. Want to grab a shield, and then swap out into Vigoroth. So go up to the Dark Pulse, the opponent throws right before we get there. And once again, they're going to come out with 2 Dragon Breath after this matchup, after we go for this Dark Pulse. So they should be able to CMP Vigoroth if we swap out here, which we are going to do. So we don't want to throw with Vigoroth immediately, because Vigoroth loses this CMP. So we're just going to overfarm, then they bring in a Vigoroth, we go up to the back-to-back. And this is a bit of a risky no-shield, but I'm pretty sure Vigoroth can live a Body Slam from this range. And it can. It only does about 32 if you have a very good, 32% if you have a very good Vigoroth. Now we can't get off both of these Body Slams. And then I'm just going to pat myself very much in the back here. Go for the most incredible undercharge to leave them in a range where we can bring in Cofagrigus and farm them down perfectly right before they get to a bulldoze, so they're only gonna get off a body slam and we come out with a Shadow Ball. Yeah, that felt good. Now, what are they gonna bring in? We're gonna wait to see what they bring in. They bring in a normal type, so we go for the Dark Pulse instead of the Shadow Ball. And now we're of course gonna bring in the Machamp afterwards. The Dragonair did load up to a move before swapping out, so they should be able to get off a move, but because the counters are doing so much damage, they're only getting off one move. And the double did 2 double kicks, so it should be 1 away from the body slam, 4 away from back-to-back body slam, so yeah, they're just not getting there. We get up to the back-to-back cross chop, go for the first one, and my opponent realizes they're not winning this, so they concede the match. Next game, lead into an Umbreon. Yikes, we have to swap into Vigoroth once again. And this time, they respond with the Haxorus. This is a bad matchup, but up energy, Vigoroth can force shields here, because if you land one body slam, you're going to be able to counter them down afterwards with Vigoroth, and they really want to keep switch advantage. But once again, as I said in the beginning, you would rather get both shields in a matchup like this, and they're probably going to give me both shields, or I'm going to get switch advantage, which would also be fine. But if we get both shields, Machamp is going to be able to perform a lot better in the back, so it's okay to give them this farm down, I feel, especially because, as I said in the beginning as well, if Cofagrigus goes up against an Umbreon, you might as well sacrifice it before it even sees the Umbreon again. So I'm just gonna let them get off all of this energy on Cofagrigus. They go for the Breaking Swipe the first time around, not really sure why, because they do have Night Slash, which does more damage, but now we can bring in Machamp, get a little bit of energy head start, and now they bring back in the Umbreon on Machamp. I'm thinking they must be running Psychic since they're bringing it in. So I shield the first one, just to be absolutely certain I don't take a Psychic. It's only a last resort, still fine. Now we can't go up. I saw a bit of stutter there, I feel. The game has been a little bit funky, and I wanted to make sure they couldn't catch it, so I ended up over farming, and then I ended up CMP tying them, which was not really the best play, but now they bring in a Vigoroth, and now we can just go for the back-to-back cross chops. We don't even have to go for the second one, because they're one off the body slam, so we can just counter them down instead. And my opponent was just ABA weak to Machamp, which of course makes it a lot more easy. I started using this team in the last set, the last 3 games from the last set, where I won all 3 of them, turning an 0-2 into a 3-2, and now we get a 5-0 as well, bringing us up into the expert rank. At this point, we're 8-0 with this team, as we lead into a Dragonair in the next game, regular Dragonair. I'm not 100% sure that a Dragonair will shield the first move when it's not Shadow, so I do go for the Shadow Ball the first time around. I only bait with the Dark Pulse if you're like 100% sure they're going to shield it, because the energy difference is so small. So we go for the Shadow Ball, they do shield it, and then we bring in Vigoroth, and they respond with a Muk. But this is not a bad matchup for Vigoroth. We can go for the first body slam, especially not a bad matchup if you're up energies. Go for the first body slam, and I was anticipating they were going to go for the CMP, so I didn't want to throw my body slam immediately. Muk does win CMP, but apparently they just don't want to shield their moves. They would rather expend the shield, which is absolutely fine by me, and then they go up to the CMP. If I were them, I would have probably thrown a little bit before, because I'm pretty sure they could have gotten off 2 moves here. But now, because they went for the CMP the first time around, I can just shield the first move and then take them out with all of this energy. But this puts my Vigoroth in a range where it is dry, and now they can farm me all the way down, which is not ideal with Dragonair. I bring in Cofagrigus, hoping they would throw immediately, or close to immediately, but my opponent wisely realizes I have no energy on Cofagrigus, so they overfarm instead. And now they will be able to come out with a move for Machamp, which is really not ideal. I have to make a call here. Against the regular Dragonair, you can take a move, but if they have fast move pressure in the back, this is going to be quite dicey. Luckily, it's a Registeel in the back, so I made the correct call. Shadow Machamp needs 3 counters head start in order to win the Zero Shields against Registeel. Otherwise, you actually lose the Zero Shields against Registeel. So because we have the 1 shield remaining, we will be able to just counter them down. They did have a move, they just decided not to throw it because they knew that I had a shield. Next game, lead into Cofagrigus. This time around, I decided to go for the Dark Pulse immediately. Last time I went for the Dark Pulse immediately, they called it an Umbreon, so I'm a little bit hesitant. But I also didn't want what happened last time to happen, where they grab the shield and then they're gonna swap out, making my life difficult. They decided to let it go. I'm thinking that when the Cofagrigus is gone, my 2 fighters are probably gonna be able to do quite well. So I bring in Vigoroth, I'm letting the Dark Pulse go on my Cofagrigus, and then they respond with a Surf Edge. But once again, we can pressure some shields here because we're ahead on energy. I'm thinking that if I shield this move, they might just let my body slam go and then bring something else in to farm me down instead of giving me the shield advantage. So I do decide to let Vigoroth go, but this is where I realize how dangerous it is to allow the opponent to have a shield up. Because even though I have a lot of energy, if they have fast move damage, which they do, my Machamp is just getting absolutely shredded by these counters. And also, I should definitely realize that this is such an obvious catch they make here and just swap in my Cofagrigus as they swap in their Cofagrigus, because it was so obvious they were going to catch this Crush Chop, so I should have saved it for later. I try to put the Cofagrigus into a range where I can farm them down and then come out with enough energy to outpace this Machamp to a move before they get to 2 Crush Chops, but no, I just get counted down, and the 10-game win streak dies in that game, but a 10-game win streak is still pretty good. Next game, lead into another Shadow Dragonair. Same procedure, as always. This time they decide to overfarm instead of throwing the Aqua Tail immediately. I think this is a pretty good play by the opponent, because the Aqua Tail would not have KO'd anyways. Now we bring in the Vigoroth, they go for a move. I think they went 7 Dragon Breath over, so they should be a little over halfway to the next one, and then they bring in a Muk. This time around, because they're down a shield, I do decide to go for the Bulldoze. I think it's very risky to generally go for the Bulldoze. It's only just more energy efficient than a Body Slam, and 2 Body Slams do more damage than 1 Bulldoze. So I think generally go for Body Slams against these poison types. They allow us to get to another Body Slam, which they have to shield if they want to keep hold of all this energy. So now we grab both shields from this Muk. We can bring in the Cofagrigus. We should be able to live a Dark Pulse from this range. So they have to expend all of their energy in order to take out this Cofagrigus, which I'm absolutely fine with. I haven't been facing a lot of Charmers, which would be the only thing I could really be afraid of, and also Confusion users, I guess. They bring in a Meganium. I really want to load up energy on Meganium instead of Shadow Dragonair, because this does a lot less fast move damage. So I just decided to load up a hell of a lot of energy on this thing, then go for the Crush Chop. I think my opponent decided not to throw any moves, because they realized they're never getting both of my shields and landing a charge move. So yeah, pretty simple game after grabbing the second shield. Next game, lead into a Lickitung. Very bad lead, of course, so we're gonna have to swap into Vigoroth, and they respond with a Machamp. And they swapped quick enough to where they should be able to farm us down before we get to 2 Body Slams. Although, this is where I realized if you have a very good Vigoroth, you can get to 2 Body Slams. And as I said earlier, you would rather, of course they're going to want to keep switch advantage, so if I put up the shield, they're probably going to give me the second shield, otherwise they're going to give me switch advantage, which would also be fine, but you would rather have the Machamp in the 0 to or the 1 to 0 shields, because if they have fast move pressure in the back, which I'm anticipating it to be a Surfetch, because that's my team, Lickitung. If you're running Lickitung, you're probably running Machamp Surfetch. That's the only thing I've seen. Because they have Surfetch, if they had 1 shield, even though I have 2 shields, they would have been able to expend that 1 shield and then done so much more counter damage to my Machamp. So by getting the 0 to or the 1 to 0 shield scenario instead of the 2 to 1 0 shield scenario, or 2 to 1 shield scenario, we're able to take out the Surfetch a lot quicker and therefore come out with a lot more health for this Lickitung. It would have been a lot more dodgy otherwise. Into the last game, lead into another Lickitung. Can we do it again? Bring in Vigoroth. Once again, they bring in a fighter. This time Shadow Hitmonchan, which I'm not really sure why you would want to run Shadow Hitmonchan as your fighter in this cup. I don't really know what the niche is really, but they allow us to get to 2 Body Slams once again, which is absolutely amazing for me, because now we can get a 2 to 0 shield advantage, which, yeah, great. I'm once again anticipating that it might be another fighter in the back, so Machamp is probably just going to be able to win this game. Also, Hitmonchan only has fighting type charge moves and then the elemental punches, so it doesn't really have any moves that's going to be able to threaten the Cofagrigus, so I can just let these go, no problem, and then go for the farm down. But they actually decide to save their Hitmonchan and then swap into Lickitung. I'm pretty sure they threw this immediately. It takes the equivalent of 6 counters for the Lickitung to get to the first 2 Body Slams, and then 5.5 for the third one. So we can overfarm by 6 more counters here and then go for the next one. On a supposed CMP, we get a little bit of lag, but I think it didn't really matter. We get off this Crush Chop to take out the Lickitung, but then they bring in a Shadow Dragonair, and 1 Crush Chop is not enough to take it out from this range, so we have to go for the payback. A Crush Chop or Rock Slap would not take it out, so once again, payback coming in clutch, one-shotting the Shadow Dragonair, and now we counter down the Hitmonchan, and that is another good game. And that was 3-0, 5-0, 4-1, 4-1, and that brings us all the way up to 28-37 elo. Very nice, this team was so good. That was the last battle for today, and overall this team is just amazing. I won 16 out of 18 games with it at a quite high elo as well, which I think is absolutely insane. I would however say this, you might be seeing a bit of a different meta around your elo or at the time of day that you're playing, so always pick a team that makes sense against the things that you are seeing a lot. Maybe this team is not going to work as well for you because of that. I think this team, however, is always going to work at least decently because it's just so good. So yeah, other than that, fun fact of the day, Wobbuffet is the only Pokemon in this meta within reason that can beat Vigoroth in all even shield scenarios if it's down 2 fast moves. So Vigoroth will be able to get a switch advantage or shield advantage against pretty much everything in the meta, making it an incredible save swap. Other than that, if you like what you see or feel like you learned something, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.